The self has four parts: the mind, the soul, the emotional self, and the physical self. Now, these four parts are connected to each other, and that where they are connected is a sacred area. This is your sacred center. So, I want to talk about an area where the soul has a connection to the mind. The mind having four levels. Right now, when you're awake, we'll call this level 4, or some people will call it consciousness. Level 3 contains all information that you have acquired since you were born up until now. And the dream area is also in this level 3. But this is kind of an interesting area because we connect here. So sometimes when you're asleep, your level 3 might be in communication with somebody else's level 3 who's also asleep someplace on this world. Maybe you're in Phoenix, Arizona, and let's say you're taking a nap. Let's say you're taking an afternoon nap, okay? Let's say it is 1 o'clock in the afternoon for you in Phoenix, Arizona, and you're taking a nap. Okay, now, let's say somewhere in Moscow, somebody is sleeping. So your level 3 might contact that Russian person's level 3 too. Okay? So they're getting to know each other. Maybe every time this happens, they're visiting. And when both people wake up, they have no clue that this happened. Yeah? So you might have friends someplace around this world that you don't know about. But your level 3 has been making friends with people all over the world and you have no clue. But don't worry, yeah, because this follows something called like attracts like. Like-minded people attract each other, okay? So you're not attracting a criminal unless you're a criminal. Do you see what I mean? There's a 10-hour difference between Phoenix and Moscow. Okay, so this makes sense. So let's say we have an Apache guy working at the Herd Museum in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. And let's say he's supposed to be cataloging things in the back room, okay? Let's say he's cataloging some items in the storeroom. Nobody's looking, so he decides to take a nap, okay? 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He just came back from Taco Bell, so he's tired. So this Apache guy, he decides to take a nap in the storage room. Yeah, nobody's back there, so who's gonna know? Yeah, so he makes himself a makeshift bed and takes a nap. At the same time, in Moscow, Russia, let's say there's a girl. We'll call her. What's the typical Russian name? Huh? Olga. Okay, let's say her name is Olga from Moscow. That's kind of rugged. Let's give her a fancier name. Svetlana. There you go. That's a cool Russian name. So let's say there's a Russian girl by the name of Svetlana, and she's already sleeping. Let's say she went to bed 11 o'clock at night in Russian Moscow time. So she's already asleep. All right, she's already zoned off, and so she's in La La Land. She's snoring away in Moscow, Russia. At the same time, we have a guy. What can we call him? What's the typical Apache name? I have no idea. Let's just call him George. Okay? George. I'm just giving them first names. So let's say George the Apache, he's sleeping in the museum storage room. And let's say he really zones out, okay? He just goes into total deep sleep. And suddenly there's a connection made. Okay? So Svetlana and George, they make a connection in level 3. And they're getting to know each other. Now, here's the thing. You do dream in your language, but maybe you've also had dreams too where you just understand things. Do you know what I mean? You just understand things. Sometimes dreams, there's nothing said. You're with somebody, you're doing something together with somebody. Maybe you're saying things to each other, but you don't even know. And you wake up and you have no clue what you said. Sometimes dreams are this way too. There's just no words, but you understood each other. You see what I mean? So even though, yes, you do speak, sometimes you hear languages that you don't understand in dreams, but sometimes you just do. Because the rules in dreams are really not the same rules that exist in the conscious world. That's why in dreams you can fly. Yeah, I can do it. I know how to do it. I finally figured it out. There's probably a lot of people that figured it out too. How do you do this in your dream? I finally figured it out how to do it at will. But try doing that in the conscious world. Everybody's going to be, what the hell are you doing? Oh, shoot. Anyway, no, I didn't try that in the conscious world. Shoot. I'm off, but not that off. Yeah. Oh man. Okay, so now let's say the level threes of Svetlana, the Russian, and George, the Apache, are making a contact. They're starting to get to know each other. Okay, now let's say that Svetlana can speak English. Okay, so this helps so that they get to know each other. So let's say George goes to Taco Bell every Tuesday. Every Tuesday he goes to Taco Bell. And then every Tuesday he's taking a nap in that storage room. So every Tuesday, let's say he and Svetlana have this meeting in level 3. But when both of them wake up, they have no clue. They have absolutely no clue what happened. They're totally unaware. And look at this, they're on opposite sides of the planet. But in level 3, there is no time and there is no distance either. Level 3 is a very interesting area. There's no time and there's no distance in level 3. So now let's just say after 5 years of meeting like this, so 5 years of once a week discussions have happened between Svetlana and George, but they have no clue. They have no clue. And then let's say all of a sudden that Svetlana decides to go see the Grand Canyon. She wants to go on Route 66. So her and her friends, let's say they book a tour package and they want to go to that hoop dancing contest that they have at the Heard Museum. They call it International Hoop Dancing Contest. They say international because Indians from Canada are coming down. That's another country, yeah. I heard it's another country. Oh gosh, that's a. I'm taking a joke on the Canadians. Anyway, so they come down for that too. Anyway, let's say that they want to see these things, the Sky City and all these places in the Southwest, and they want to go to Monument Valley, Utah, and all these places, and so they're going on this tour package, and then they get to this Heard Museum. So they decide to go through there, and let's say George is just waking up, yeah. Let's say it's Tuesday afternoon, George is just now waking up from his 1 hour nap. He goes to sleep at 1 o'clock, gets up at 2 in the storage room of the museum. And let's say Svetlana and her friends are looking at the museum items, and a UPS truck pulls up to the museum and they have some packages for the museum. So they say, okay, get George on it. He's Apache, so what does being Apache have to do with hauling packages? Yeah, somebody go get George. He's an Apache. So they summon George, and he comes, and they said, George, there's some boxes out there. Can you go get them and bring them in? The post guy just dropped them off at the entrance. So he says, alrighties. So George goes over there, and he's got these boxes, and he's coming in to the part of the museum there. And let's say Svetlana, she drops something on the floor. So she bends over to pick it up, and George doesn't see her there. So he bumps into her, knocks her on the floor. Next thing you know, there's boxes all over her. And so and George loses his balance, and so he falls on top of her. And so then he stands. Oh, I'm sorry, miss. I didn't see you. And they make eye contact, and ding. What's going on here? She's like, hey, do I know you? And he's like, I don't know. And he's like, huh. They really feel that they know each other, but this is the first time they're meeting. Because remember, she's from Moscow. And George is from the res. The furthest that George has ever traveled to was Phoenix for his job. And now there they are, sitting on the floor looking at each other, packages all over the place, and they're stunned. Both of them are totally stunned because they feel like they've met before. This is actually the first time that they're meeting. But it seems like they already know each other. Even though they don't know one thing about each other, they still feel really familiar with each other. This happens, my friends. This happens in real life. This is not a fantasy. Some people might say, oh, they knew each other in a past life. No. No. This is not what it's about. Absolutely not. Nope. And I'll explain why a little later, okay? I'll explain why. But these two know each other in level 3. They've been meeting once a week for 5 years in level 3, talking to each other. But when they woke up, they had no clue. These are dreams they don't remember. But 5 years have gone by, and they've been making this meeting every Tuesday. This is what can happen in level 3. It's a very beautiful thing. It is a very beautiful thing. And I bet you anything, there's listeners out there who this has happened to them before. When you've met somebody for the first time, but it seems like you already know each other. This doesn't have anything to do with reincarnation, okay? This has everything to do with meeting in level 3 when you're asleep. Because this is what happens. This is the kind of thing that is very, very possible. And like attracts like. So however you are, that's what you're going to attract. Okay? That's how that works. It's really interesting. So that's an example of the kind of things that can happen with level 3. Now, the level 2 area contains information that you gathered since your soul was created up until you were born in this life. That's level 2. And then level 1 is that sacred area inside of you. So these are the 4 levels of the mind. Now, what I want to explain next has to do with your soul. So I want to do this in a way that is as less confusing as possible. Because when you're talking about the journey of the soul, it can be complex. In ancient Lakota star knowledge, we have a constellation. It has a certain number of stars, and in the center of this, there's a special location here. This is where souls are waiting. Imagine, if you will, on the earth, when a woman is pregnant, as soon as she conceives, the earth gives a part of its soul to this unborn baby so that it can assist the mother to nurture this child. Because a body needs a soul. And this baby's body cannot rely on the mother's soul. So this is why the earth gives a part of her soul to the unborn baby. So as the baby is developing inside the mother, it has a physical body, and it has emotions, and it has a mind. As its brain is forming, its mind is forming too. So a personality is starting to take shape. And remember, in Lakota, there's 4 parts of the self: the body, the mind, the emotions, and the soul. So this is why the earth gives a piece of her soul to this unborn child. So this way it has a soul piece. So it still has 4 parts. Now, when the baby is born and takes its first breath of air, the soul that is waiting in this constellation comes down into that baby, and it enters the baby through the crown of its head. Now, when it leaves this area, it gets another piece of the universe. It's like a soul piece of the universe. And it comes down to the earth and goes into that baby's body, and it joins that earth piece, that earth soul piece. So, in the Lakota world, the soul does not look like the body. That's Christian thinking. In the Christian world, when they say the soul of Johnny Cash, that's the soul of Johnny Cash. You see a half-invisible Johnny Cash walking around. See, this is a Christian mentality, but that's not the Lakota perspective. That's not the Lakota perception. In the Lakota world, a soul is an energy. It's an energy. It has no shape. It has no form. It's an energy that's inside of you. So, in the baby, as soon as the baby takes its first breath of air, the soul has 4 pieces. 1 piece comes from the earth. Remember that? When the mother first conceived, 1 piece comes from the earth. And 1 piece comes from this part of the universe that helps the soul to travel in this part of the universe. So that's a universe piece. And then you have the soul itself. You have the soul itself. So when the baby takes its first breath, these parts connect to each other inside the baby. Now, when this person dies, the earth piece goes back to the earth. This universe piece goes back to the universe. And then that person's soul goes back to that star constellation again. There's a passageway there that goes someplace else. Okay, so the soul is going to go through there. It's going to go through there to another location. And there it's going to see if the soul is complete or not. If its development is complete or not. If it's not complete, then it's going to come back. It's going to come back again and wait in that same constellation again. And it's going to wait for another body to be born on the earth. So when another baby is taking its first breath, it comes again to the earth and it gets a universe piece again. And all babies, when they're conceived, they get an earth piece. So this whole thing happens over and over and over until the soul's development is complete. This is the Lakota star knowledge concept of reincarnation. This is how that works. So, when a person dies, their level 3 information goes to level 2. When a person dies, their level 3 information joins level 2. So when you come to the earth again, everything that happened to you in the past goes into level 2 because you don't need it. When you're on the earth, you don't need it. That's only important in the soul realm. But when you're on the earth, your level 2 is not necessary. So it kind of takes a step back. So your level 3 is collecting information from your human experience. Again, when you are on the earth, you develop a level 3 in your mind, and it's collecting information from this lifetime. When you die, this information goes to level 2, and it stays there. So every time you come to the earth, this information in level 2, it's kind of dormant for now. You don't need it because you're gathering new information from this lifetime. So you need to be aware of you and your relation to the people around you. Your mother, your father, your brothers, your sisters, grandma, grandpa. You need to be aware of your relation to the people in your family and in your community. So you don't need information from previous lifetimes. That's not necessary. Because if you had it, you might go crazy. That's too much. All that information in level 2 is too much for the human mind to handle. It could cause an overload. It could cause a nervous breakdown. It could cause an anxiety complex, anxiety attacks. It could also lead to schizophrenia too. Like I said before, there's lots of reasons how a person gets schizophrenia, and this could be one of them if you unlock the information from level 2. It's dangerous. So That's why the mind locks it up, because you don't need it. It's not necessary. In Lakota, they always say the most important moment is right now, the present moment, which also means the most important lifetime is right now, the one you're living right now. This is the most important moment. All that information in level 2 is not necessary. When you're on the earth, when you're on the earth, all the information in level 2 that contains everything from the time your soul was created until you were born in this life. That's a lot of experiences because we've been to the earth thousands and thousands of times already. And we're probably still going to be coming back some more again. Do you see what I mean? That's a lot of information. That is a lot of information. But this information is concerned about the development of your soul. It doesn't have to do with how smart you become or how much knowledge you have. That's not the important thing. What's important is how do you live your life. That's the most important thing. When you're talking about the mind and this level 2 area, I'll say it one more time, that all that information, you don't need that when you're on the earth. Because when you're here, you're alive right now, you're listening to this show or you're doing whatever, this is what you need to be concerned about. Your life right now. And when you were born, you chose your mother. Yeah, that's a Lakota belief. Before your soul came on the earth, you chose your mother. And I know for some people that's really hard, like people whose mothers abandoned them, people whose mothers may have died when they were still babies or children. It's hard for them to accept that. But that choice was made. And this is another thing too. A soul does not recognize culture. A soul does not recognize culture or language. All the soul is concerned about is coming to the earth, getting inside of a body to live a life, and try to make the best of that life. So it doesn't matter whether that soul is native or not. Because the soul does not see native. The soul doesn't give a shit if you're German or Japanese. It doesn't care about that. What the soul is concerned about is how are you going to live your life? How are you going to deal with things when they get difficult? How are you going to enjoy your good times? These are the things that the soul is concerned about, and this is the same in every culture. In every culture, we laugh at the same kind of things. We get angry at the same kind of things. We get sad at the same kind of things, and we get scared at the same kind of things. So this is an evidence that the soul does not see race. The personality is not part of the soul. The personality is a part of the brain. And when the body dies, the brain dies, and so does the personality. The personality dies with the brain. It does not go with the soul. So a soul does not have a personality. So when you hear these ghost stories and people say, "Oh yeah, that house is haunted. There's an angry ghost in there," and most of the time that's bullshit. But when there is something there, it's not a ghost. Okay? What's there is a residue. It's a residue of a very intense incident that happened. And it's like a recording that plays over and over and over. That's what people experience. But that's not a ghost. That's not a soul. Okay? That's like a residue, something left over, like say for example, a place where a lot of people were killed. In Lakota country, for example, the area of the Wounded Knee massacre, it used to be a very scary area because for many, many years since 1890, people would hear voices out in the prairie crying where this massacre happened. So finally in 1990, they had a holy man go out there and he neutralized that energy so it doesn't happen anymore. Because everybody thought those were the souls of those people that were massacred. They thought the souls were trapped at that massacre site, but it wasn't. That was not true. It was a residue of the massacre. It just kept playing all the time. So this holy man went out there and he neutralized the energy, because that's what it is. It's energy. So he neutralized it and it stopped. So nobody hears it anymore. See, those were not the souls. That was a residue. Something left over. Residue is something that's left over when something really intense happened. So now it's not a scary place anymore. That's an example. So, anywho, the information from previous lifetimes is not going to show itself when you're on the earth. When you are on the earth, all the information from your previous lifetimes is not going to show. It can't. It can't. It's not possible. But there's always exceptions. Every now and then, there might be something that leaks through. Okay? But let me present this question. Remember what I said earlier, that before you're born, you choose your mother. That means you choose where you're going to be born. There are no mistakes. Because some people say, I just feel I'm supposed to be an Indian because I just feel like an Indian, and my thoughts are the same as an Indian's thoughts, and in my heart I truly believe I'm Indian, and so I identify myself as an Indian. That's low self-esteem. That's what you call low self-esteem. Because in basic Lakota star knowledge belief says there were no mistakes. When you chose your mother, and there was no mistake. So when you start saying, I was born in the wrong body, I was born on the wrong side of the world, then you're disrespecting your soul. When you talk like that, you're disrespecting your soul because your soul did not make a mistake. And the second thing I want to point out is that the soul does not give a shit if you're native or not. Because usually people who want to be Indian, they think Indians are better. They think Indians are more enlightened. This is not true. Absolutely not. We're human, just like everybody else. We're not better than anybody else. So when non-Indian people, when they want to be Indian, it's because of low self-esteem, low self-worth, and that means they are dualistic. This is why I keep saying on this show over and over and over, it's important to know what duality is. And then the third Lakota belief to think about is that the most important moment is now, which means the most important lifetime is right now. Who you are, wherever, whatever you are. Are you Turkish? Are you Sami? Are you Inuit? Are you Tlingit? Are you Lakota? What are you? That is what you need to be concerned about. When you try to be something different, then you're going against yourself. You are going against yourself. Now, it's okay to have interest in other cultures. Yeah, it's okay to have an interest in another culture, to learn about it, and maybe even incorporate some concepts from another culture into your own life. My gosh, my students, most of them are not native, but they use concepts and incorporate it into their lives, but they're not trying to be Lakota. I do not have wannabe students. My students, they're all over the world. I do have a Lakota student, but guess where she's from? She's from Australia. But she's Lakota, yeah? Not kidding. She's Lakota, but she's not even on the res, yeah? I think that's funny. But like I said, they use concepts from Lakota Star Knowledge and incorporate it into their lives because it works for them. But they're not trying to be Lakota. They never say they're Lakota. They say they're Danish, they're Spanish, they're Colombian. I have one from South Africa. He's not trying to be Lakota. He just likes the culture. And a lot of concepts he really likes. So he incorporates it into his life because it feels good. But he never says he's Lakota. He's proud of who he is. He is proud of his African heritage. That's the healthy approach, what they're doing. The unhealthy approach is when you say, oh, I feel like an Indian and I live like an Indian and my thoughts are like an Indian, so I'm going to call myself Indian. That's the unhealthy approach. Because a lot of people, they think that as long as you're Lakota in your heart, then you're Lakota. That is 100% bullshit. Remember what I said earlier. There's 4 parts to the self: body, mind, heart, and soul. If you're going to be Lakota, you have to be Lakota in all 4 areas. That means it has to be in your DNA. And then you have some twisted people that they think that if they do the sun dance, that somehow magically they become Lakota. That's bullshit too. That violates natural law. That violates natural law. But remember what I said just a few minutes ago. Your soul doesn't give a shit what you are. What your soul is concerned about is how are you living your life and how are you making the best with what you have. That's the most important thing. It don't care what your nationality is. It doesn't care what your nationality is. That is not important. I get several emails every week. People who say in a past life they were Lakota. And they say, I have information to save my people. See, just because they think they were Lakota in the previous life, they think that this is important in this life too. What did I just say at the very beginning of this hour? The soul does not give a shit where you're at. What the soul is concerned about is how do you live your life and how are you making the best with what you have and what you have access to. And all the information from your previous lifetimes is not important for this one. That's why it's not necessary when you're on the earth. The funniest one I ever got was from a guy in Australia. And he said in his dreams he's reliving his past life and he has information from his past life as a Lakota to save the Lakota people of today. So basically what he's saying is that today's Lakota people are all dumb and stupid and that we can't even save ourselves. So our very existence depends on this Australian guy. That's bullshit stupid. Yeah. I really had to think of a word for that one. That is ridiculous. One of the first things I asked him is I said, "Do you speak Lakota?" And he said, "No." Well then, how do I know what you're saying is true? I said. Because anybody could say that. No, but I have this information. So I said, well, tell it to me. Then I will know whether what you're saying is real or not. But I have to take it to the people, he said. Well, I am from the people, I said. And I just kept putting questions in front of him. And finally, I frustrated him, so he stopped writing to me. We have holy women and holy men all over in our Lakota country. What makes this Australian guy think that we need him? What makes this Australian guy think that we need him? When you have people like this Australian guy, this is really low self-esteem. This is low self-worth and they have identity crisis. They're just really messed up people. They really have a mental problem. The biggest mistake is that people think that Indian people are the best people on this planet, and that is so far from the truth. There's Lakota people in prison for molesting little boys. And then some people will say, well, that's because of the white man. No, it's not. No, it's not. It has nothing to do with the white man. These guys are just sick. And it just shows you that Indians have the same problems as other people in this world. We've always had problems. That's why we had rules. In traditional Lakota teachings, they're just filled with rules. Because we have rules, that shows you that we were not perfect. These Iktomi stories and stuff like that, and all these things are rules after rules. That's because we were like everybody else, that we had problems too. We are not the best people on this earth. There is no such thing. There is no such thing. So when people start idolizing native people to the point where they want to be native, this is unhealthy. And then people will say, yeah, I used to be a Lakota in the past life, and I remember living in a teepee, and I had a wife and 2 kids, and my name was Running Antelope Through the Fire, Jumping Over the Moon. and then they'll say something like, "This word keeps coming to me. This word is Rava Lama Duda. What does that mean?" Yeah. And then I know 100% I know they're bullshitting because there's some sounds in those words that do not exist in the Lakota language. So I know they're lying to me. I know they have a mental problem. They're lying to me. They're full of shit. And they're trying to con. They're conning themselves and then they try to con others. Because this is the thing. If you really, really, really could remember your past life as a Lakota, then you should automatically be able to speak Lakota too. Automatically. Because this is in your mind. Yeah? So if suddenly you remember your Lakota from the past life, you should know how to speak Lakota because Lakota people, even 100 years ago, the only language they spoke was Lakota. So if you think you're Lakota from a past life, you should be able to speak Lakota automatically. Automatically, you should be able to speak it. That's how it works. And if you can't, then you have a wild imagination. You're living in a fantasy land and you probably need therapy and you have really, really low self-esteem. And low self-esteem is not a good foundation to build anything because it's unhealthy. And in whatever you do, it's going to fail. So when we're talking about the four parts of the mind, remember this level 2 is not necessary when you're on the earth. So that's why it kind of closes down. It's dormant because it's not necessary. Then when a person dies, all the information from level 3 goes into their level 2 and then they continue the soul journey again. And it cycles over and over and over and over. So it's not important what race you're born into. That's not important. What's important is how do you live your life. But I'm going to say this one more time. It's perfectly okay if you have an interest in Native American culture. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, myself, I'm a musician and I was classically trained. So I have interest in European music, classical music. It's an interest. But I'm not trying to be European. I'm not walking around saying, yeah, I'm Ludwig van Beethoven reincarnated. I'm not doing that. Well, not anymore anyway. Which is really funny because I can speak German too, yeah? So oh shit. So for me, European cultures are very fascinating. It's interesting learning things and learning about other cultures. I've always had an interest in other cultures to see how people are and maybe these cultures explain why they do certain things and stuff like that. Well, I'll give you an example. Not too long ago, I met a German girl, and she said something like, "Geez, so you're living in Berlin since 2004?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Geez," I said, "that's kind of crazy." He said, "How do you do that since you're an Indian guy from the plains and you must really miss your home?" And I said, "Actually, no. I never ever got homesick." They have preconceived notions. They think that just because I'm Lakota, that all the music I should be listening to should only be Lakota, that I should be wearing beadwork and feathers in my hair and walk around in leather all the time. Yeah. And then if you come into my apartment and you hear German music and they're like, "Huh? Why is this Indian guy listening to German music? He should be listening to Indian music." You see what I mean? So people think that just because I'm Indian that the only music I should be listening to is powwow music. When they come to visit me, when I'm turning some music on, they're expecting me to play powwow music. And when I'm playing something like Rosenstolz, which is Germany's best band ever, they're like, "Why are you listening to Rosenstolz? Eh? Aren't you supposed to be listening to powwow music?" And why? Maybe I like Rosenstolz because I can speak and understand German now. So just because you come from one culture, other people think that you must do only things from that culture. And this is what I don't like because that's racism. When people say that just because I'm Lakota that I should only be listening to powwow music, that's racism. Because number one, I am human and I am a musician. That's number one. Number two, I'm Lakota. See, what's more important is that I am human. This is Lakota star knowledge teaching. In the beginning, we called ourselves Ikche. This is human. We did not call ourselves Lakota in the beginning. That comes later. In the beginning, we called ourselves Ikche. This means human. The books don't have everything. All the books that you can find on Amazon, they don't have everything. And most of the books I don't recommend because there's duality in there. There's just very few books on Lakota culture that I do recommend. Just very few. And they're really old books. I just want to reiterate that when you're talking about the mind in this level 2, that it's not necessary for this lifetime. Because your level 3 is gathering information from this lifetime right now. Every decision that you're making, every thought that you have, every emotion that you feel, what are you doing with it? See, all that information gets recorded in level 3. Then when you die, that information moves into level 2. And when you're off the earth, you're using level 2. When you're off the earth, you are using level 2. So level 3 involves your experience on the earth. This is the foundation for the understanding that the most important lifetime is the one you are living right now. And like I said, it's okay to have interest in other cultures. When you learn about other cultures, it strengthens your own beliefs and it expands your mind. You become more enlightened. You see the world that it's really a lot of connections. There's so many things are connected to each other, and it's wonderful. You see the difficulties, but you also see the potential as well. And the more you focus on that, the more you are fulfilling the promise that you made to yourself before you were born, and that you will make the best of your life that you can. And it doesn't matter what culture you come from. But as soon as you try to be somebody else, you go against your decision before you were born. Think about that. To read more about Lakota Star Knowledge Spirituality, you can read my book called Wichocha Otechike. You can see the book cover on the right side of this screen. This book contains the information to what I talk about on my Lakota Spirituality videos. To purchase this book, please click below where it says Show More. Clicking on that link will open up the description below, and there you will see a link called To Purchase My Books. As you will see, it's an eBay link. Click on that eBay link, and there you will see the information to get this book. Lila Pila Mayelo. Thank you very much.